The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the muddy banks of the river. Jamie, a Jacare with a memory like a sieve, patrolled his territory with a lumbering gait. Unlike his sleek crocodile cousins, Jamie's body was stockier, built for long periods of waiting rather than bursts of speed. Rows of jagged teeth lined his wide, perpetually grinning jaw, a constant reminder of his carnivorous nature. But despite his formidable appearance, Jamie's most striking feature was his eyes. Unlike the beady black eyes of most reptiles, Jamie's were a pale milky white, almost translucent, giving him a perpetually surprised expression.
Blast it all! Where do all the tasty fish go when a chap needs them? Disappearing acts, the lot of them. Like that time I saw this right corker of a lizard sunning himself on a rock, blinked for a tick and poof! Gone! Vanished! Like a magician's trick. Now where was I? Ah yes, the fish. Tricky blighters, those fish.
Suddenly, a high-pitched squawk pierced the air. Jamie looked up, momentarily forgetting his woes, as a flash of blue feathers landed on a low-hanging branch across the river. It was Josh, the black-bearded Jacamar.
Well. Looks like someone's a bit hangry today.
Hangry? What in the ruddy swamp is hangry? Is it something to do with those, hanging vines over there? They do look a bit grumpy today, wouldn't you say?
A fit of giggles erupted from Josh, a sudden outburst that startled a nearby dragonfly into a frantic flutter. Wiping tears from his eyes, he wheezed,
Honestly, Jamie, haven't you been keeping up with the latest jungle lingo? Hangry, a combination of hungry and angry, a state clearly visible on your grumpy little face right now.
Jamie frowned, or at least he thought he did. It was hard to tell with his permanent reptilian grin.
Oh, right. Hangry. That's me all right. Speaking of hanging, did I ever tell you about the time I got my tail stuck in those very same vines? Took hours to get untangled, I can tell you. Those vines weren't best pleased. Not at all.
All right, Jamie. We can save the vine story for another time. Now, if you just pay attention to where you're lumbering, maybe you wouldn't miss all those juicy fish hiding in the mud.
Josh could be a helpful fellow, but his constant critiques could get tiring.
Easier said than done, my feathered friend. These old eyes weren't exactly built for spotting tiny fish in murky water. Besides, remember that time
Training session. I've been studying the hunting techniques of the great herons. Maybe a little stillness training is in order.
Jamie's eyes widened. Training? With Josh? This was unexpected.
Training, you say? What kind of training? And did I ever tell you about the time
Herons, standing perfectly still for hours waiting for the right moment to strike. You could benefit from some stillness.
And so began a rather comical scene. Josh, perched on a nearby branch, chirped instructions while Jamie attempted to stand perfectly still in the mud. It wasn't a pretty sight. Jamie fidgeted, his olive-green skin glistening occasionally in the dappled sunlight. His tail swished nervously, and every now and then, he'd let out a loud yawn, startling any unsuspecting fish that might have been lurking nearby. Every so often, a low chuckle would rumble from his chest, seemingly for no reason, a quirk that left Josh perpetually bewildered. Just as Jamie was about to declare the whole exercise a waste of time, a flash of movement caught his eye. A plump catfish darted out from behind a rock. Instinctively, Jamie lunged, his rows of sharp teeth flashing in the sunlight as his powerful jaws snapped shut with a satisfying crunch. He emerged from the mud, catfish wriggling in his mouth, and looked up to find Josh doubled over in laughter, tears streaming down his tiny face.
You almost looked graceful.
You all right there, little buddy?
Jamie was covered in mud, but at least he wasn't hangry anymore. He swallowed the catfish with a satisfied rumble, then looked back at Josh, who was still wiping tears from his eyes.
Oh, blimey. That reminds me of the time I tried to be all zen and still like one of those...
Not another story, Jamie. Please, for the love of all that is wriggly and delicious, let's just call it a day.
Jamie, for once, didn't launch into a tale. Instead, a slow, rumbling chuckle bubbled up from his chest, growing into a full-blown fit of laughter. The mud around him trembled, and a surprised frog took a flying leap into the river. Josh, momentarily speechless, stared at his friend.
What's so funny?
Jamie wiped a tear, or perhaps a stray bit of mud from his eye.
It's just you, Josh. Here you are, this tiny bird, trying to train a giant lizard like me, and then calling me graceful when I look like I swallowed a log.
Another wave of laughter hit him, a sound so unexpected and joyous that it filled the clearing. Josh, his initial annoyance forgotten, couldn't help but be swept up in the merriment. He let out a chirp, a sound that quickly escalated into a series of high-pitched giggles. As their laughter echoed across the water, an unlikely bond deepened. Jamie, the forgetful Jacare with a heart of gold, and Josh, the eccentric Jacamar with a boundless spirit, found a strange kind of companionship in their shared moments of absurdity. The hunt for fish might not have been a success, but they had discovered something far more valuable: the joy of laughter and the comfort of friendship, even if it came with a side of mud and a healthy dose of forgotten stories. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and purple. As the laughter subsided, a comfortable silence settled between them. Then an idea struck Jamie.
Speaking of logs, did I ever tell you about the time I got mistaken for a floating log by a group of sunbathers? It was quite the kerfuffle.
Josh groaned, a playful smile stretching across his tiny beak. Here we go again, he thought, a wave of both exasperation and amusement washing over him. But as Jamie launched into his latest tale, filled with exaggerations and forgotten details, Josh knew that despite the occasional annoyance, these moments of companionship were something he wouldn't trade for anything.